Naturally, there's little point in dwelling on the past. Now come here, my love. Not a thing to...
In 2007, director Tim Burton turned a Victorian murder ballad into one of the bloodiest studio films ever released. A musical where throats are slit, bodies vanish through trap doors, and pies are baked from human remains. But the strangest part of Sweeney Todd isn't what happens on screen. It's what happened behind the camera. From gallons of blood that weren't even red, to prosthetics so realistic they made crew members physically ill. Tonight, we're uncovering 20 weird facts behind Tim Burton's razor-sharp masterpiece.
Is my lucky friend still now?
Fact 1. The blood was actually orange. The blood in Sweeney Todd looks impossibly rich, thick, theatrical, and almost unreal. That's because it wasn't red at all. The fake blood used on set was deliberately colored a bright, almost neon orange. Tim Burton and his cinematography team knew the film would undergo heavy desaturation during color grading, draining the world of warmth and pushing everything toward cold grays and blacks. Normal red blood would have appeared dull and muddy on screen. Orange, however, transformed into that deep, velvety crimson once the color was stripped away. The result was blood that felt stylized rather than realistic, more like stage paint than gore, which helped Burton lean into the film's operatic tone. But on set, the illusion didn't exist. Crew members were drenched in glowing orange liquid during filming, to the point that many wore bin liners, literal garbage bags, over their clothes just to avoid being permanently stained. Between takes, the set didn't look like a crime scene. It looked like something far stranger. A Victorian slaughterhouse soaked in fluorescent orange. Fact 2. They used 70 gallons of fake blood. All that orange blood added up fast. Over the course of production, it's estimated that Sweeney Todd used roughly 70 gallons of fake blood. That's not a dramatic exaggeration. It's enough liquid to fill a standard bathtub. And unlike many horror films that reuse blood sparingly, Sweeney Todd demanded repeated, precise sprays for every throat-slitting sequence, often requiring multiple takes. Each death scene was carefully choreographed like a dance number, meaning the blood had to hit its mark every single time. Miss the angle, mistime the spray, and the take was ruined. By the end of filming, the sets were constantly slick, stained, and sticky. Floors had to be scrubbed between shots. Costumes were replaced or soaked. And yet, the sheer excess became part of the film's identity, turning violence into spectacle and murder into something grotesquely beautiful. Fact 3. Tim Burton hates musicals. Here's the strangest contradiction of all. Tim Burton hates musicals. According to Helena Bonham Carter, Burton's partner at the time, he openly disliked the genre and avoided it entirely. And yet, Sweeney Todd remains the only musical he has ever directed. The reason traces back decades earlier to 1980, when Burton was a CalArts student visiting London. On a whim, he attended a performance of Sweeney Todd and then returned the next night, and the night after that. Something about Stephen Sondheim's score, the macabre humor, and the operatic brutality bypassed Burton's usual resistance. This wasn't a cheerful musical. It was a nightmare set to music. Burton would later admit that Sweeney Todd didn't feel like a musical to him at all. It felt like a gothic horror film that happened to sing. That distinction is what stayed with him for over 25 years, until he finally had the chance to bring it to the screen. Fact 4. Prosthetic limbs made crew members vomit. The violence in Sweeney Todd wasn't just disturbing on camera, it was physically overwhelming on set. During filming at Pinewood Studios, the production relied on hyper-realistic prosthetic limbs, necks, and body parts designed to be sliced, stacked, and discarded repeatedly. The craftsmanship was so convincing that some crew members became nauseous when walking onto the set, needing fresh air breaks just to continue working. Between takes, there were piles of severed arms, legs, and heads scattered around the room. Spare rubber necks were kept nearby in case Burton wanted additional throat-cutting takes. The effect was deeply unsettling. Not theatrical, not playful, but eerily convincing. For hours at a time, cast and crew worked inside what felt less like a film set and more like a slaughterhouse frozen in time. Even seasoned professionals admitted it crossed a line from fake to uncomfortably real. Fact 5. Depp's daughter's illness halted production. In the midst of all this staged carnage, real life intervened in the most devastating way. Filming was abruptly halted when Johnny Depp's 7-year-old daughter, Lily Rose, was rushed to the hospital with E. coli poisoning that led to kidney failure. Depp and his partner Vanessa Paradis lived at the hospital for over 3 weeks, rarely leaving her side as doctors fought to save her life. Production shut down entirely while Depp remained with his family. The irony was almost unbearable. A film about a father driven mad by the destruction of his family was paused while its lead actor faced the same fear in reality. When filming eventually resumed, the cast and crew were deeply aware that the darkest moments on screen paled in comparison to what had nearly happened off it. It's a reminder that behind even the most stylized horror, real life can be far more terrifying. Fact 6. Johnny Depp was terrified of blood. For a film drenched in arterial spray, Sweeney Todd was made by people who could barely stand the sight of blood. Johnny Depp openly admitted that he's not very good with the sight of my own blood, describing an instinctive reaction to look away whenever he's injured. What makes this stranger is that Tim Burton shares the exact same fear. Burton has said that even routine blood draws at the doctor's office make him uncomfortable, forcing him to avert his eyes. And yet together, these two blood-averse filmmakers created one of the most graphically violent studio musicals ever released. Every razor swipe, every geyser of blood was carefully designed and rehearsed. Not embraced, but endured. The violence wasn't indulgent for them, it was mechanical, choreographed, and emotionally distant. In a way, their discomfort may have heightened the film's cold precision. The blood isn't celebrated. It's ritualized, relentless, and strangely joyless, mirroring Todd's own detachment as the bodies fall. Fact 7. Sacha Baron Cohen sang all of Fiddler on the Roof. When Sacha Baron Cohen auditioned for the role of Signor Pirelli, he didn't sing a single note from Sweeney Todd. Instead, he performed something far stranger. According to Burton, Cohen sang the entire score of Fiddler on the Roof. Not one song, not a medley, but several full musical numbers back to back. 5 or 6 songs in total. An entirely different musical. An entirely different tone. The choice was bizarre, bold, and completely unexpected, and it worked. Burton was immediately impressed, not just by Cohen's vocal ability, but by his fearlessness and theatrical confidence. Pirelli, after all, is a character built on exaggeration and performance, a fraud wrapped in bravado. Cohen's audition proved he understood that instinctively. He wasn't just singing, he was performing identity itself, which made him perfect for a man pretending to be someone he isn't. Fact 8. Helena Bonham Carter sent 12 audition tapes. Despite being Tim Burton's longtime partner, Helena Bonham Carter was anything but a guaranteed casting choice. Stephen Sondheim, famously protective of his work, demanded proof that Carter could handle the music. To avoid even the appearance of favoritism, Carter recorded no fewer than 12 separate audition tapes of herself singing and sent them directly to Sondheim for approval. This wasn't a formality, it was a test. Carter had to prove that her casting wasn't nepotism, it was merit. Sondheim listened carefully, scrutinizing her vocal control and emotional range. When he finished, he approved her immediately. In fact, he was so impressed that he never questioned the decision again. Mrs. Lovett's fragile warmth, comic timing, and moral decay weren't inherited through proximity to the director. They were earned, tape by tape, note by note. Fact 9. Depp was cast without proving he could sing. While everyone else had to audition extensively, Johnny Depp was trusted entirely on his word. He told Burton and the producers that he could sing, and they believed him. What's shocking is how far that trust extended. Sets were being constructed, costumes were designed, props were finalized. And still, no one had actually heard Depp sing a single note of Sweeney Todd. The entire production moved forward on faith alone. It wasn't until later in pre-production that Depp finally provided a vocal sample. When the producers heard it, the reaction was relief more than celebration. Their gamble had paid off. Depp's restrained, wounded singing style became one of the film's defining features. Not showy, not theatrical, but emotionally raw. A voice that sounded less like a performer and more like a man barely holding himself together. Fact 10. Christopher Lee recorded songs that were never used. Horror legend. Christopher Lee was originally cast in Sweeney Todd in a ghostly role meant to frame the story with a choral introduction. Lee didn't just agree to appear, he recorded multiple songs for the film. His deep, commanding voice was meant to echo through the opening, adding mythic weight to Todd's bloody legend. But in the end, all of it was cut. The character was removed entirely, and Lee's recordings were shelved. Remarkably, Lee took the decision with grace, later stating that it would have been worse to film scenes and then see them discarded. Still, he admitted the loss was painful, especially because the lyrics were, in his words, wonderful. One of horror cinema's most iconic voices remains trapped on the cutting room floor, unheard, unseen, and ghost-like in the most literal sense. Fact 11. Johnny Depp had to use a mechanical razor. Not every razor in Sweeney Todd was real, and that was by Johnny Depp's own request. In several close-up shots where Sweeney snaps his blade open in a single, fluid motion, the prop wasn't a straight razor at all. It was a mechanical device fitted with a concealed button that allowed the blade to spring open instantly. Depp would press it with his finger, carefully hiding the mechanism from the camera. The reason was practical, not theatrical. Depp struggled with the real razors, finding them awkward and unsafe to handle at speed, especially during fast, repeated takes soaked in slippery fake blood. The mechanical razor allowed him to maintain the illusion of lethal precision without risking injury. It's a small technical detail, but one that preserved both performance and safety while helping define Sweeney Todd's signature gesture, the snap of a blade, followed by silence. Fact 12. The Tower Bridge wasn't supposed to be there. In the opening moments of the film, as Sweeney Todd's ship arrives in London, the skyline briefly reveals a fully constructed Tower Bridge. It's a striking image, and completely impossible. Sweeney Todd is set in 1846, but construction on Tower Bridge didn't begin until 1886 and wasn't completed until 1894. The film jumps forward in time by nearly 50 years in a single background shot. The error somehow slipped through production, post-production, and final release. But for Burton, historical precision was secondary to atmosphere. The bridge wasn't meant to be accurate, it was meant to be iconic, a visual shorthand for London itself. Still, once you notice it, it's impossible to unsee. A modern landmark haunting a Victorian nightmare, quietly breaking the illusion for anyone paying close attention. Fact 13. This is the only Sondheim film adaptation he approved. Stephen Sondheim was famously cautious, some would say ruthless, when it came to adaptations of his work. Many of his stage productions were turned down for film or heavily criticized when adapted without his involvement. But Sweeney Todd stands alone. In his 2010 book, Finishing the Hat, Sondheim stated that this was the only screen adaptation of his work that he truly approved. That endorsement is extraordinary, coming from a composer known for his precision and perfectionism. Sondheim believed Burton understood the material not as a musical first, but as a tragedy. Songs weren't treated as breaks in the story. They were the story. For Burton, a director who claimed to hate musicals, the approval was validation that he had honored something sacred. And for Sondheim, it was proof that sometimes the unlikeliest filmmaker is the right one. Fact 14. The US version was censored by camera angles. To secure an R rating in the United States, Sweeney Todd wasn't shortened. It was reframed. The US cut uses alternate camera angles during the film's most violent deaths, shifting focus away from the spray of blood and onto Sweeney himself. The international version lingers longer on the gore, showing more explicit arterial splatter in just a few key moments. The difference is shockingly small, only 3 to 5 seconds total, but it was enough to satisfy the ratings board. Burton didn't remove violence, he redirected it. The blade still falls, the deaths still happen. But the camera turns away at just the right moment. It's censorship by implication, proving that sometimes what you don't see is just as powerful as what you do. Fact 15. Anne Hathaway was almost Johanna. Anne Hathaway was reportedly considered for the role of Johanna, but Tim Burton ultimately passed. His reasoning wasn't about talent, It was about recognition. Burton wanted the audience to see Johanna as trapped, innocent, and unknown. Casting a rising star would have shattered that illusion. Instead, he chose newcomer Jane Weisner, whose lack of fame made the character feel more vulnerable and real. Ironically, Hathaway would later work with Burton anyway, playing the White Queen in Alice in Wonderland. As for Weisner, Sweeney Todd remains the largest production of her career. One role defined by restraint and quiet suffering, chosen not because of celebrity, but because of its absence. Fact 16, Burton watched the stage show 3 nights in a row. Long before cameras rolled, Sweeney Todd had already embedded itself deep in Tim Burton's imagination. While studying at CalArts in 1980, Burton traveled to London and attended a performance of the stage musical. Instead of leaving satisfied, he returned the next night, and then the night after that. 3 consecutive performances. Not out of obligation, but fascination. Burton has said the show didn't feel like a musical to him. It felt more like a dark fairy tale, a gothic revenge tragedy told through music instead of dialogue. That experience lingered for over 25 years. When Burton finally adapted Sweeney Todd for the screen, he wasn't discovering the story. He was fulfilling a vision he'd been quietly carrying since his student days. Fact 17. 3 generations were devoted to Sweeney Todd. Paul Gemignani served as conductor and music supervisor for the 2007 film, but his connection to Sweeney Todd stretched far beyond a single production. Gemignani was also the music director for both the original Broadway and London stage productions. His interpretation of Sondheim's score helped define how Sweeney Todd would sound for decades. The legacy didn't stop there. Gemignani's son, Alexander, played Beetle Bamford in the 2005 Broadway revival, the very same character his father had helped shape musically years earlier. Across stage and screen, father and son contributed to the same story from different angles. Few musicals can claim that kind of generational continuity, a single family helping carry its sound forward through time. Fact 18. Most of the singing was recorded live on set. Unlike many movie musicals that rely heavily on pre-recorded vocals, Sweeney Todd was performed largely live on set. Tim Burton wanted the performances to feel raw, imperfect, and emotionally immediate, not polished or theatrical. To achieve that, many of the actors sang while filming their scenes, surrounded by moving cameras, trapdoors, and blood-slicked floors. This approach was risky. Live singing meant capturing usable vocals while actors were acting intensely, sometimes while being drenched in fake blood or physically struggling with props. But the result gave the film its distinctive sound, restrained, haunted, and intimate. Johnny Depp's vocals in particular benefit from this method, sounding less like a trained singer and more like a man unraveling in real time. The choice stripped away Broadway polish and replaced it with something far more unsettling, music that feels trapped inside the characters, clawing its way out. Fact 19, the mother and daughter were only 6 years apart. One of the film's more unsettling casting realities lies in plain sight. Laura Michelle Kelly, who plays Lucy, later revealed as the beggar woman, is only 6 years older than Jane Weisner, who plays her on-screen daughter, Johanna. The age difference is minimal, yet the film asks audiences to accept decades of separation, trauma, and physical decay between them. Burton relied heavily on costuming, posture, and performance to sell the illusion. Kelly's haunting physicality, combined with makeup and movement, creates the impression of a woman worn down by years of suffering. It's a testament to performance over age. But once you know the truth, the relationship takes on an eerie, almost dreamlike quality. Fact 20. Timothy Spall auditioned because of his daughter. Judge Turpin is one of the film's most loathed figures, cold, controlling, and morally rotten. Timothy Spall's performance is so unsettling that it's hard to imagine anyone else in the role, but Spall almost didn't audition at all. The push came from his daughter, who desperately wanted him to work with Johnny Depp. Spall admitted that once he knew Tim Burton was directing and Depp was starring, he truly wanted the part. His daughter's fandom helped nudge him into one of the darkest roles of his career. The result was a villain defined not by spectacle, but by quiet cruelty, a performance born from encouragement at home that led to revulsion on screen. So there you have it, 20 disturbing and bizarre facts that prove Sweeney Todd wasn't just a musical. It was a blood-soaked obsession shaped by fear, tragedy, obsession, and decades of creative restraint finally unleashed. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of cinema's darkest adaptations, make sure to like the video, subscribe to Iconic TV Rewind, and let us know in the comments which film you want us to dissect next. Until then, keep your razor sharp.